At this point, no one has any doubt that Jon Jones will be remembered as one of the best athletes in the history of MMA fighting. In 2009, he was disqualified from a match he was clearly winning because of a questionable call. This was his only loss as a professional mixed martial artist. Since then, he has changed from a hothead who couldn't stay out of trouble ended with a unanimous decision who is now in the lead. Let's look back still remember the best fights of his incredible Ultimate Fighting Championship career. Let's get started now. Number 1. Jon Jones wins by a TKO over Vladimir Matyashenko, 2010. It was Jon Jones' way of letting the world know that he is a big threat to them. The fight against Vladimir Matyashenko, a former light heavyweight champion of the International Fight League, was the test to see if Jones, who was tall and skinny, could handle competing at 205 pounds. He did well on his test because he beat Matyashenko in less than 2 minutes. He did this by wrestling and grappling better than Matyashenko and stopping the fight with a vicious elbow at 1 minute 52 seconds into the first round. Number 2. Rematch of Alexander Gustafsson and Jon Jones, 2018. Before this fight, Bones was the biggest UFC enemy and a tough opponent. It had only been a short time since he failed yet another drug test and lost his belt. This happened about 18 months ago, but because of how well known he was given a chance to win the title right away when he was reinstated. At UFC 232, he faced a familiar opponent, and Jones couldn't have done a better job. He beat his opponent. He seemed like a young man who was eager to get his point across, and Gustafsson never had a chance against him. Since the fight was stopped in the 3rd round, Jones has been on top of the boxing world. Number 3. Jones vs. DC-1, 2015. This was one of Jon Jones' most impressive moments inside the octagon. Between him and Daniel Cormier, there wasn't much respect. It was just pure hostility, with neither fighter willing to lose or even give an inch to the other. Neither fighter was willing to give his opponent even an inch. Jones was going to be put through his paces by an opponent who was unbeaten and had a wide range of skills. It was going to be a test of how mature he was. Jones, on the other hand, won by unanimous decision, showing once again why he was the best athlete in his weight class. This fight was the start of what would become one of the UFC's most heated rivalries. Number 4. Jon Jones beats Shogun Rua by knockout, making him the UFC's youngest champion, 2011. Mauricio Shogun Rua was already a living legend in the mixed martial artist scene before UFC 128. Jones, who was only 23 years old at the time, was set to fight the Brazilian star, who was a champion in both Pride FC and the UFC. The next beating, which was given to the champion at the time, is still remembered as one of the worst in the history of the UFC. After Jones beat Shogun in the 3rd round with a mix of punches, knees, kicks, elbows, and everything else, he became the promotion's youngest champion, a title he still holds to this day. Number 5. Jon Jones' famous first fight, which was against Gustafsson, 2013. Jon Jones has had a long and successful career, but his most recent fight was by far the one in which he was in the most danger. Gustafsson gave the champion everything he had during his fight, and Jones was knocked out of the ring several times as a result. At the end of the fight, nobody knew for sure who had won, and there were good reasons to worry that Jon Jones' reign as the best fighter in the world might be coming to an end. The fight ended with a unanimous decision in favor of Jon Jones, and fans still remember it as one of their all-time favorites. After the fight, both fighters needed medical care, and while they were there, they talked about how hard it was to fight each other. The main event of UFC 165 was a great way to close out the night. Latest news about Jon Jones is that he's getting ready for his long-awaited return to fighting, and his new UFC deal will make him the 2nd highest paid fighter in the company. Jones will move up to the heavyweight division and fight Cyril Gane after taking some time off from the octagon. Even though rumors had been going around for years, he didn't make the move until he had agreed to a new 8-fight deal with the UFC. Jones's new contract makes him the 2nd highest paid fighter in the business, right behind Conor McGregor, who is also getting ready to fight again in 2023. Jones will now beat Israel Adesanya, who has been fighting Jones for a long time. Jones and Adesanya have been enemies for a long time, but it's almost certain that they will never fight each other because Jones is said to weigh about 250 pounds and Adesanya fights around 180. McGregor, who is still at the top of the list, will probably fight in the second quarter of 2023. But before he can do that, he has to pass the USADA testing pool. Jones will fight Gane for the first time in 3 years. This will be his first fight since he beat Dominic Reyes for the light heavyweight title in a tough match. Jones has had the title before. He won it by beating Reyes in a fight that was very close. Jones and the UFC have been in talks for a few months now. He wanted to fight champion Francis Ngannou, which would have been one of the most exciting fights in the history of the sport. After making only $600,000 per fight for the company, Ngannou and the UFC couldn't agree on a new contract, so he quit and he left his belts empty. Jones was upset that he would not be able to compete against Ngannou, but he's happy to have signed his new contract. Jones is right away in the running for the heavyweight title. If he beats Gane, he might fight Stipe Miocic for the title. His manager, Richard Schaefer, was quoted as telling Ariel Helwani, "I'm very happy for Jon. I'm so happy that MMA fans will finally get to see Jon fight for the UFC heavyweight title. There have been plans for it for a long time now. You never know for sure who was going to show themselves. We knew it would decide who would win the championship. Jon really wanted that to happen. I'm very happy that Jon will have the chance to win the championship." Francis Ngannou's decision to leave the UFC led Jake Paul to take another shot at Dana White. I think the UFC is finally figuring out that Jon Jones is the GOAT. Because he has a talent that will be passed down from generation to generation, they were very interested in working with us and open to the idea of making a fair contract, which is exactly what we did here. Because of the deal we made for Jon, he now has the highest pay for a heavyweight fighter in the history of the UFC. Overall, I think Hunter told me that it might be the second highest of all time, right behind Conor McGregor, he said. The conversation went on for a long time, but everyone was polite the whole time. It wasn't the time when both sides began to stand their ground. I think that everyone wanted to find a way out of the problem. We were able to figure out what to do, and this is it. It was an agreement that worked well for both sides. It's possible that both of them felt a little bit of sadness because of it. I think that in order for this to happen, both sides had to give up something. We're very happy about this, and I'm sure the UFC is too. I'm sure Jon is thrilled to be back in the ring and have the chance to fight for the heavyweight title. That was all from this video. Thanks for watching. Stay tuned for more.